Welcome to a webinar, the number 5 of the series of webinar on ocean literacy that is organized by the Responsible Age 2020 research project. As I said earlier, I'm Pierre Strosser. I will facilitate the webinar, a webinar that is targeting the issue of blue growth, and maybe more importantly, sustainable blue growth, and how ocean literacy, in particular targeting decision makers, policy makers, can help in supporting blue growth development. If you have not heard about ocean literacy before, it's something we say at the beginning of each webinar. It's a new term, but that addresses all challenges, including in what we use as terms like awareness raising, capacity building education, coming initially from the US science and education fields. And that was a focus of 2 projects. The first one, Sea Change, Age 2020 project that ended last year, and Responsible, our project that will finish by March, April 2019. And literacy is gaining more and more importance for science, for education, for policy, and in particular, how can capacity building, awareness raising literacy can support achieving the objectives of marine policy, or what we will discuss today, ensuring blue growth is sustainable and properly seized as opportunities. And if you want to think more about literacy, ocean literacy, our starting point is that when you are literate, it means that you are aware of how important the ocean is, of its current health and problems, but also that you understand how humans influence the ocean, and vice versa, how the ocean influences humans. And finally, as a ocean literate person, you know what you need to do to protect yourself as an individual or collectively the ocean, and at the same time seize the opportunities the ocean offers. And that's where blue growth stands. And in Responsible, and that's one of the elements that is structuring our webinar series, we believe that literacy, ocean literacy, is an issue for everybody, not limited to science and education as it was at the origin, but also an issue for parents, citizens, consumers, professionals, civil society, decision makers, etc., etc. And it's only when each person, everybody will move forward in accounting for the ocean that the ocean will be protected and offers opportunities to human development. So that's our starting principles. And the webinars is to share some of the views, challenges of practices in ocean literacy, and to understand how it can be brought forward so it effectively supports European policymakers, European civil society stakeholders in taking the ocean properly into account in everybody's decisions. Before we enter into the content of this webinar, just reminding that this is the number 5. They are organized on Thursday from 2 to 3 every month. And what gets out of the webinars will be used first for supporting the organization of a conference we are planning to organize with sister project and many organizations in Brussels, March 2019, that will address the issue of an effective ocean knowledge system. And it also helps us to derive some policy making messages so as to bring forward our messages to wider audience and to policymakers. So this was the context. And then before we move to the discussions, remember that when you use the Zoom platform, you better mute your microphone, except for the host and speaker speaking. You can use the chat button to ask questions. It's not moderated, and we support you in using this chat button as much as possible. And you can also use the question answer buttons, and that we moderate it. And in some cases, we bring some of these questions to the panelists. And in some cases, if you have a burning question you want to speak, you can raise hand. Now, to talk about the link between blue growth and ocean literacy, we have asked 3 persons to help us to bring their experience. First, Alessia Crociati from the European Commission, DG Mare, working on blue growth, blue skills in particular. The second, Ricardo Arun from the University of Las Palmas, that will share with us experiences from the aquaculture sector. And then Harald Hansen, having a head from country organization, public services, is from the Norwegian Ministry of Climate and Environment, and will bring his views on blue growth and literacy. And the facilitation of the webinars is a shared work between Denis Bailly from the University of Bretagne Occidentale. Denis will also bring some experience on renewable energy and its connections to policy making, and then myself that will do the overall facilitation. 3 questions for today's webinars. The first one is more like a basic questions, is how is the blue economy progressing? Clearly there was a policy statement in the Europe 2020 strategy. Blue growth has its place. A few years have passed. Where are we? What are some of the challenges? The second question is realizing that blue growth is not sized equally among sectors. There are some constraint challenges. And then how do we unlock blue growth opportunities? Do we seize them? And in particular, how can ocean literacy play a role, help in moving things forward? And the last question is in relation to ocean literacy, in particular when we target decision makers and policy makers, what are the specific challenges and solutions for being effective in literacy? So these are the 3 questions that Alessia, Ricardo, Denis and Harald are going to bring some light, and hopefully participants in the webinar will complement with their own experiences, whether through the chat or for some of the contributions, written contributions later. I propose we start with Alessia. How is the blue economy progressing in the EU? What are some of the challenges faced? Word flow is yours.
Thank you very much, Pierre. I hope you can hear me well. Yes?
Very good.
Thank you to Responseable for organizing this series of webinars that I find very, very useful to see ocean literacy from different perspectives. So I think it is really a good tool, and also to Action in particular for organizing the webinars. And also I have to say that I'm very glad to see that there is one webinar focusing specifically on blue economy. Because sometimes when we talk about ocean literacy, we forget about the economic part of ocean literacy. If you start with the first slide, Pierre, in order to understand how blue economy is evolving and also how our policy is evolving, I think we have to start with the big picture, understanding how we put blue economy in the context of the world. These elements that you see listed there are not new and not surprising, I would say, but when we developed the first blue growth strategy in 2012, the attention was much more focused on jobs and growth, on how to better use ocean resources in a sustainable way, but to create new jobs. It was after the crisis, and the Juncker priorities were much focused on this. So I have to say that now, when we think about blue economy, we are taking much more into account the, I would say, catastrophic conditions in which the planet ocean, I like to call it like this, is. The consequences are, of course, of climate change, pollution, growing population. There are drivers at global level that we have to take into consideration when we design the policies. So if I have to list 3 imperatives that really we must take into account are, first of all, reducing emissions. Second, really promote a circular economy, or in our case, a circular blue economy, taking into consideration also marine litter and how to recycle marine litter. And the third element, maybe the most important one, is the capability of adapting. So design a policy that is able and flexible enough to adapt to a world that is changing very quickly, and that sometimes we are not able to address the challenges in a proper way. And just to mention that you may be aware that last week the Commission has published the decarbonization strategy for a climate neutral Europe by 2050. And this will be one of the bases for the work on blue economy of the coming years as well. Because the strategy covers nearly all EU policies, but there is an highlight about the use that we have to do on oceans to complement the lack of use of land, in the sense that if we want to reduce emissions, then we have to look more into the ocean for energy, food, and other sources. So I invite our attendees to have a look at the strategy, because I think it gives a good overview of the current situation. And also to notice that when we think about blue economy, we take into account, for example, the IPCC report that was published last week, or we already look into what the future IPCC report on ocean and cryosphere that will be published in 2019 will bring. So we try really to look forward. Next slide, please. And in the next slide, you can see, in fact, how the ocean can be part of the solution. So here it comes the element of blue economy, how blue economy can contribute to the solution of the big challenges. And here you can see some key data that I think are very crucial to open the eyes and to have some food for thought. Less than 1% of Europe's waters could provide 3 times more seafood than we consume today. And Europe is also leader in offshore renewable energy. In the decarbonization strategy, we say that we need to increase the production of electricity, but we know that most of the electricity have to come from renewable energy, and a lot of this will come from offshore. So we really need a systemic change on how we see energy production, food production, and if you see also the last part, biodiversity, it's also how we can use the resources to create new materials, new medicines. So to rethink really the way how we use the ocean. And for example, last week I was giving a presentation at an Arctic event about blue economy that until I would say 10 years ago, maybe it was not the main theme of an Arctic conference. But because of how the situation is changing, also the Arctic now is more and more interested into blue economy. If we go to the next slide, and here you can see the blue economy in the middle of different drivers, I would say. And this is how blue economy is evolving. Until years ago, blue economy was a set of economic sectors that were going from tourism, fisheries, aquaculture, including a set of enablers like sea basin strategy, education and training. But now we see that it is not up to date anymore. We are really to change how we think economic sectors. They are much more interlinked. We cannot think anymore at sectors as silos. And here you see new sectors coming up, I would say, like coastal protection. Now there is an increasing interest from the financial community to look at investing in coastal protection. Or you see pharmaceuticals, or again, blue circular economy. So sectors that are increasingly growing, but I would say that they are at the beginning. A lot is happening, but a lot more has to be done. Another driver that we see is how other sectors, other economic sectors are feeding into the blue economy. If we think, for example, about the IT, all the innovative services, the blockchain system, the underwater robotics, artificial intelligence. These are all elements that are starting to enter the blue economy more and more. And again, it's a new trend that we have to take into account. And because of these challenges, and because the sectors have to adapt and to contribute to the solutions, we need ideas, we need innovation. So we are also doing quite a lot of work in promoting new products that are coming out from universities, for example, from academia, to not let these projects stay at university level, but to bring them, try to accompany them to the market. So there is a lot of work ongoing with incubators, accelerators, science parks, etc., etc. And here you can see how blue economy fits into EU priorities, Agenda 2030, and also, of course, the jobs and growth. So in fact, when we talk about ocean literacy, we have also to think about how to inform industry. Those that feed the economy around the ocean, they have to be the ones to know, to have a good, I would say, luggage of ocean knowledge to support the business decisions that they are taking on a daily basis, and also to better understand the interaction between land and ocean, how the activities that take place in land are impacting on the ocean. We kind of know it, but there is a lot still to be known. And here also the whole world of data come into the game, because there is a lot of work going on in collecting data from the ocean, but still we know very little about it. And it is crucial to have reliable data in order, again, to take responsible decisions when it's about the use of resources. And now to move to this last slide, if I say that policymakers in businesses have to know, have to be aware of all these elements that I've mentioned, then it is also very important that those organizations that are investing money, so feeding again the economy, are well aware of what it means investing money in ocean-related economic sectors, because they have a huge impact. And this is the last element I would like to mention. In fact, in Bali at our ocean conference this year, so in October 2018, the European Union, together with the European Investment Bank, WWF, and other organizations, launched the first global framework to finance a sustainable ocean economy. And this is based on 14 principles that were drafted by the Commission to provide guidance on how to ensure that investments support a sustainable use of the seas and the coasts and a sustainability of ocean ecosystems. So all this to say that ocean literacy has really to enter into the houses of all those that are connected to the economic activities of the ocean, including the financial institutions. So the key question is, of course, how to do this and how to make ocean knowledge actionable, how to use ocean knowledge to support these decision-making processes. And I think that one initial reply could be that we need to target the different audiences with different messages. And this declaration of the Sustainable Blue Economy Finance Principles is an example of how we pass the message of ocean literacy to financial institutions. So, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Alicia. Maybe I'm not going to react to that. Maybe just to ask Ricardo and Harald a few reactions to the presentation of Alicia. We see that blue growth, as originally thought, has changed drastically in only a few years. And then what do you see as made progress, and which sectors do you find being more in trouble, be it because they don't develop or because they don't develop sustainably? So I don't know if Ricardo, you want to start, and then a few words, few reactions, and then Harald will follow.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy to be in this webinar and having this introduction by Alicia. It's so interesting to see the support that the European Commission is also giving to the Blue Growth initiative in different regional areas. Well, I'm living in an island. We are living in an archipelago. That means that Blue Growth is already embedded in all the different policies in my situation. But we were mainly focusing on one type of Blue Growth activity, that was tourist, mass tourism. Canary Island is one of the typical place for many holidays maker in Europe, but there are many other options, and I'm working in the academia and the university that for Blue Growth is part of our activity since several years ago. And I think the diversification is becoming a key word in many coastal areas, because there are some places that are more focusing on shipping, or they are more focusing on oil and gas activities. But we, as I said before, we are in an island, and there are different issues from marine biotechnology, from renewable energy, from other sectors that the Blue Growth or support, or the Blue Growth initiative by the European Commission is really giving a push and providing some new possibilities for the local economy. That's quite important. And I think Responsible Webinar is really matching this point. Thank you for selecting this topic, and I'm really glad to share my know-how or the things we have been doing here in the Canary Island on the aquaculture issues later on. Yeah.
Okay, you're done. Good afternoon. It's good to be part of this webinar, and I think much of the solution to to help support sustainable development and blue growth will be on creating a common framework and a common foundation, including a knowledge foundation on what is the state of the ocean, what is the possibility of different sectors, which is much of the challenge which we see that people come with to the debate with a different knowledge foundation. So having processes to establish this is crucial. So I think this is one of the keys. And where we see progress, I think a key is to get business on board. And we see business sectors are coming more and more into the debate, both with shipping becoming more green, finding renewable solutions. Aquaculture is, in many cases, improving their sustainability, even though there are challenges. We see the challenges and a lot of positive development with fisheries. Much is about also getting ratifying and implementing already existing global agreements, such as the Port State Measures Agreement for fisheries to avoid illegal fisheries. But I guess one of the main challenges where we see trouble is getting many of the land-based industries on board also, to include land-based industries in the idea about the blue economy. We see how, such as marine litter, it's land-based sources, which is one of the main challenges there. And we see also for other types of pollution and pressures on the marine environment. So I think that's one of the areas where we see the main challenges. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, both Ricardo, Harald. I think clearly progress. I think what's interesting is Ricardo says more opportunities for local development, and Harald, you say, and a progress with blue growth in some sectors. So that's rather positive. And if I go back to what Alessia showed with already pictures where you see the complexity, you re-emphasize that in fact blue growth is not only an issue for traditional marine sectors, so what is on the sea, but it's clearly a clear land-based challenge where we need to progress also. Before we move to the next step, this was putting back blue growth on the table. One question was that I launched a poll if we should target stakeholders in priority by literacy initiatives, how to do better, how to do sustainably. Who do you think we should target in priority? So please go to the poll, think about it, knowing that in the answers that you get, that you can choose, reality is a bit more complex, because when you say EU level policymakers, we just saw that there were hundreds of EU level policymakers that you could choose, whether they are from a specific sectors like dealing with fisheries, but they're also looking at the one dealing with climate change and decarbonization, for example.
Yes.
So please give a bit your views, consumers, sectors, professionals. Harald mentioned it also, the importance of targeting businesses, decision makers in businesses. Alicia mentioned also a decision maker in financing, let's say a different, a very specific group of people. Local authorities, not much choices with NGOs. We assume that they are already aware of the challenges of blue growth, sustainable marine economy. Okay, so sectors professionals clearly on the top as decision makers, but then a range of different sharing of responsibility, and targets in people we should target. So when we will talk about policymakers in the next question and discussions, let's keep this in mind. Let's keep that behind the word policymakers, there is a diversity, there is the EU, yes, but there are financial institutions, there are sector professionals, and it's quite diverse group of people we talk about. I suggest we just move to our next questions. I will give the floor to Denis. The next question was about dealing with subsectors that we feel are a bit stuck, or with Ricardo, maybe the chance to see some sectors that got stuck but found ways to proceed and to progress. And in the contribution from Ricardo, that will be about aquaculture, and Denis, that will be about renewables, a hidden question, which is, can literacy help? Can it help supporting sustainability? So floor is yours, Ricardo, Denis, and Denis, I let you follow with the facilitation.
Okay, thank you very much, Pierre. So I'm Denis from the University of Brest. I'm an environmental economics working in the marine. So we'll start with Ricardo to reflect on the experience in Canarias about aquaculture development. Floor is yours, Ricardo.
Thank you, Denis. I'll share my few slides in a more general framework of this unlocking process of aquaculture. I may start with this ERA chair project that was granted to our university, AQUA. It's a project that is trying to consolidate research excellence on aquaculture and marine ecosystems, and also improve the relationship among our partners, either in the ERA, also with the outermost regions, overseas territories and countries. And as one of the milestones was the creation of the Research Institute. So we use the framework of this AQUA project to develop our blue growth strategy, taking in the consideration the European standards. And those are the main topics: coastal aquaculture, marine conservation, environmental protection, biotechnological applications from different species, local species, or species that are able to produce some, as Alicia mentioned, pharmaceutical products or industrial products that can be used later, biofuels or whatever. And artisanal sustainable fisheries also, and marine spatial planning. But aquaculture was one of the main issues. And that's more the number of the people working in the institute. A brief intro to Canary Island. Canary Island is 100 kilometers far away from Morocco, and it's a place where more than 2 million people are living in the islands, in the 8 islands, but more than 15 million of tourists per year. And when you are a tourist, you want to eat fish, and you want to eat seafood, and you want to eat dog products. So there is a lot of pressure on the fisheries, and there are overfishing processes in some places, but aquaculture is becoming one of the instruments to provide seafood, valuable seafood, and also good product for the local market and for the visitors. So the Coop Institute is trying to work with these sustainable goals. With of course, number 14 is the more accurate one, and number 4, but as also covering other sustainable development goals. As for example, our institute is a 50-50 women and men, so that means we have a gender balance quite well inside the institute, and brings a lot of opportunity for discussions on different point of view in issues. Ecosystem approach to aquaculture. Of course, Harald was mentioning before, aquaculture have a bad image in many places, and it's considered as a polluter, it's considered as a competition with traditional fisheries activity. But more and more, there are many cases in the world that can be used as aquaculture as inside the ecosystem, with ecosystem approach, and bringing different approach, different techniques or different processes that are providing that the aquaculture activities emerge already in the regional or local ecosystem with our principles. What we want to produce in the Canary Island, we are producing some fish in cages, mainly in cages. We are trying to produce some mollusks like this abalone, aliotis. We are trying to produce microalgae and trying to produce macroalgae also, but also try to preserve our environmental conditions, and that those activities will not really damage or interfere with the pristine, well, pristine, not pristine, but there are a lot of endemic and a lot of marine species that's considered the Canary Island and the Micronesia and as general as a hotspot of biodiversity. So we don't want to interfere with those values, but promote sustainable aquaculture production there. So how to unblock this? Well, from the very beginning, in the 1960, we started different meetings with local stakeholders, with sectors, but especially with regional government and island government representative, trying to show them how aquaculture is sustainable. Aquaculture procedures are happening in different places, the good samples, and bringing them to the situation of the Canary Island or other outermost region, discussing different alternatives. And this was one workshop, bringing people from Guadalupe, from Japan, from Korea, from European countries also, and trying to share the different actions, the different experience on aquaculture, and with which tools or which alternatives are possible to develop a sustainable aquaculture production in a certain area. So these are more or less the outputs of this first workshop: monitoring techniques, implementation of marine spatial planning tools, and that is becoming more and more relevant in recent years, that marine spatial planning process is in the different coastal regions of Europe, also here in the Canary Islands. Implement alternative production technique like integrate multi-trophic aquaculture or recirculation systems. Try to as much as possible. And also, when you have the product, then you're not going to sell this standard fisheries product. You can put added value with the processing or with labeling, with better marketing activities. For example, there are some companies that are already selling ecological sea bass aquaculture. They're selling in Italy or in France. Those are the clients. That's more or less the actions. Another action was the capacity building training for master student and PhD students, but also for technicians or civil servants that are working in different administrations, either in the Canary Island or in Madeira archipelago or in other outermost region, that they became aware of the know-how of the new tools that are available for marine aquaculture, either as a general, with summer school. Every year we have different summer school. One more about the marine algal culture, third one about marine spatial planning that was in Madeira, and this year in September we have the last one about the blue innovation in island systems, with focusing on aquaculture on how to implement the spatial planning processes, and also what are the current status of marine conservation issues related to the health of the coastal environment. So these summer schools are more or less between 25 to 35 attendants, each one of them, from different backgrounds, students, but also technicians or people in the administrations. They are bringing some insight of this, or the know-how, how is this know-how about the aquaculture, and how are new examples or new activities happening in either in the Canary Island or elsewhere. So let me see. Oh, it's blocked. No. So another dissemination action, that's a conference, international conference, where we have 3 workshops. One about the role of marine conservation strategy. More and more, we are aware of the use of aquaculture techniques to produce juveniles, or to produce recruits of endangered species. For example, the abalone here in the Canary Island was overfished, so it's already included in the catalog of protected species of the Canary Island government. So we are producing those recruits of restocking, as a restocking activity. Or in Italy, there are some people doing grouper aquaculture, and then they are released in marine protected areas. So these are aquagrouper from this action are becoming a good tool to regenerate the conservation status of this species. These are more the, sorry, a little bit.
Go to your conclusion, please, Ricardo.
I'm just trying to finalize, but it's blocked my screen now. I'm sorry about that. I don't know how to. Here is the presentation, but
you can conclude without.
Okay, we have also an annual meeting with the regional representative of the different ministers, from fisheries, from environment, from research and innovation. And those annual meeting was policymakers at regional and national level, was the very good point to discuss the advance, and also to see how those new tools or new aquaculture activities, these are different. So these annual meetings helps discuss the point and where the bottlenecks and where the difficulties to develop this aquaculture. Well, this is the first map of, and there are 2 more slides. This is the PROAC regional plan of aquaculture development. In pink are the areas designated for aquaculture, and numbers are of enterprise doing aquaculture in the area. This is in the case of the Gran Canaria, the island where I stay. And right now, this year, the Gran Canaria Island government provide 4 million euros to develop an accelerator of private investment on aquaculture, offshore and on land. They are already, the island government or the regional government is already pushing for more and more investment or more production in aquaculture. So from a difficult point in the very beginning, in the beginning of the 2000s, now we are having a 20% or more than 20% production of aquaculture in Canary Island compared to the total of Spain. That's more or less the approach I wanted to show. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. I wanted just to say a few words about the experience of France on marine renewable energy. 10 years ago, the French government has fixed the objective of developing 6 gigawatts, mainly with fixed wind farms. in 10 years later, we have only one pilot wind in the sea. So in 10 years, a lot of effort, a lot of investment, a lot of debate, public discussion and others, and still no production of electricity from renewable marine energy. So there is a big concern from the industry. The industry slowly withdrawing from the sector and from the policymakers. So that has raised a lot of discussion, and as the France is opening a third call for new projects, the discussion has been about two issues. What we call the legal license to operate, how to reduce the time to grant license to allow for industrial development. And the other one is the social license to operate. Because what has happened for marine renewable as for aquaculture here in France, a new project, is that despite the very intense public discussion, consultation, there always are people, opponents, who go through legal procedures or other demonstration, and they achieve a very long delay in starting of the project. So one of the discussion is what is needed in terms of not only communication means, but content of the communication, so to facilitate this social license to operate, so to ease the possibility for the industry to develop the project. And so we have been trying and discussing, and a lot of interest into using the opportunity of discussion on marine spatial planning to implement, to get people play on serious game, on role play games, so to engage people in understanding the objectives and issues associated with this development. But there is also a very strong demand from the policymakers and from the industry to share the knowledge we have about the sociology of the process, about this issue of social license, and also about legally how the legal license could be given more easily. So I think this is an area where there is a lot of needs and demand from all parts of the society to provide more knowledge, so that the social debate be more knowledge-based and that the objectives of the policy are more widely shared. So it's just an example to reflect on one of the topics we have worked on in Responsible. And to close that session, maybe a short comment from Alicia and Harald on this discussion about on how to unlocking the blue growth. Alicia, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. I think that the element that you brought up, well, for offshore renewable energy, but in general, social legal license is very much linked, as you said, to MSP, to marine spatial planning, because it's a matter of really putting around the table the people that have to work with a single resource, that is the sea and the coast, and decide together how to share this resource and how to divide. And it's also a matter of public acceptance, because if you have a very touristic place, of course it is not very much appreciated if you put a wind farm in front of the beach, for example. So there are many economic activities, and it will be only increasing in the coming years, so that will be channeled together. So I think that coordination and dialogue between the different actors is already key and would be even more key. I also wanted to flag another activity that I think will grow in the coming years, and is the multi-purpose offshore platforms. That in this moment they are at initial stages, but I think also they will grow in the coming 10 years because of what I said at the beginning, that we want or we don't want, we have to go more offshore. So we will need constructions where we can put together aquaculture, energy, maybe leisure, I don't know. So there will be even more dialogue needed by both industry and policymakers. Yeah, sorry, I finished.
Thank you very much, Alicia. So, Harald, can you reflect on the discussion from your experience?
Yeah, it's there's been some very interesting presentations now, and it's interesting to hear a little bit more on the development. I think Ricardo mentioned also the development of integrated multi-trophic aquaculture, which is a very interesting development, but it's also a challenge to develop it in a large scale and to have profitability in it. And as Alicia mentioned on the marine spatial planning, I think this is key, either because this is also part of what we in a way refer to in our management plans as integrated management, but we look both at the areas and the marine spatial planning, but also taking it to the level of political decisions and also more policy development on use on oceans, and also the capacity building here with workshops and with education is absolutely a key to achieve a blue growth and a blue economy.
Thank you very much, Harald. So I'll leave the floor to Pierre for the last question of the webinar.
Thank you. I suggest we are going to continue on what Harald started to discuss. It's to move to your own experiences in how to communicate, how to raise awareness for policymakers, keeping in mind, as we have seen, that the world of policymakers is a very diverse world. If I go back to the poll that was filled earlier, there is much hidden. If I cross this poll with what Alicia showed on one of the presentations, where you see many policies, part of them being land-based. So Harald, when I ask you the question about the challenges and solutions for effective ocean literacy for a specific target group, what we call policymakers, what are some of the experiences that you can share with us?
Well, I think to start with the short answer, a big challenge we have is the sector-wise management, with a lack of coordination and communication between different government agencies, different institutes, but also with the private sector, different private sectors in between themselves and with the government, and also with the civil society. So we are all living in these bubbles and not communicating well enough on what is the Common Knowledge Foundation, what is a sustainable ocean economy. And I believe that one answer to this is relating to ocean literacy is to change the narrative a little, as my former speakers have talked about the opportunities in the ocean economy. Alicia talked about the different possibilities for blue growth, and Ricardo mentioned the sustainable development goals. And I believe that shifting the narrative to the opportunities and to the possibilities in the ocean economy is a key to gain interest and gain literacy also within policymakers, to see that there are a lot of possibilities in the ocean economy. And for us as Norway, we live from the ocean. We're based on the ocean from the early days with fisheries, to shipping, to offshore oil and gas, to aquaculture, to tourism. All of our economy is based on the ocean and ocean activities. And we also know that, as mentioned, we will depend on the ocean to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. The solutions will be found in the ocean. Both, not only is it about, as Ricardo mentioned, the Sustainable Development Goal 14 on life underwater, but also on the goals on food, on energy, on poverty, on jobs, on gender equality. A lot is very related to the ocean economy. So, and we see how the challenges are now. We see overfishing, we see marine litter and pollution, we see loss of habitat and loss of biodiversity. And to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, to find jobs, to have economic opportunities, we need clean and healthy oceans. That's a prerequisite for economic growth and development, and for a healthy life on this planet. And as such, it's not enough to only protect 10, 20, or 30% of the ocean in marine protected areas, which has been many of the solutions provided by NGOs, but also by politicians around. Of course, marine protected areas is one of the keys. It is one important tool, but we can't focus separately on protecting smaller fragments of the oceans. Instead of talking about protecting 10 or 20 or 30% of the ocean, we need to talk about managing 100% of the ocean sustainably. And I think communicating about that and how moving towards clean and healthy oceans and sustainable management of 100% of the oceans, how that can lead to economic growth and development is key to gain interest and literacy among policymakers. So you can say that we need a paradigm shift from where we talk about production or protection in the ocean and move to production and protection. So we need to see production and protection as something that comes together. And we need this paradigm shift is moving from a fragmented management to a holistic management, where we see not sector by sector by sector management, but cross-sectoral management, seeing different economic sectors in relations, moving from single species management to ecosystem-based management, and moving from impacts of single pressures on the ecosystem to the cumulative impacts on the marine ecosystems. And the Norwegian model for this is what we call our integrated management plans for the Norwegian ocean areas. And this is, if you call it marine spatial planning or integrated ocean management, it's two sides of the same coin. But more than just a management document explaining what to do on the ocean, one of the main effects we get from these plans is the process, because we build it on a common management, common knowledge foundation. Formerly, you had politicians from the different ministries coming together and discussing the realities. They had their own government agencies and own government institutes coming forward with their science, their knowledge about the oceans, and this could diverge from what the other ministers came with. But now, instead of having at the top level a discussion of the realities in the ocean space, now you have the government institutes and agencies and research communities coming together, forming a common knowledge foundation, coming up with a status report and on raising issues, and delivering this upwards to the ministerial level, where we go from just a description of the status to deciding on how how to use ocean areas based on this knowledge. And we now have a system where we update these plans every 4 years and revise them every 12 years. And we have one plan for each of our 3 sea areas. And I think this is moving to common knowledge foundation. You create more literacy, more awareness, and you also seeing all the sectors in connection. There's a possibility to both protect the environment better, gain better environmental status, but also facilitating more economic activity, as you can see them in line, and facilitate for every sector. And you can see how, what you need to do, what new rules, what you need to do on every sector in relations to the others. And this is also in line with the OECD report on the ocean economy in 2030 and the potential in the ocean economy if you move towards this integrated ocean management. So there is a huge potential in the oceans, but for some reason we're still not really there across the globe. We're working on it in Norway, but it's not at all perfect. It's a huge challenge. The EU is working on it, but still we're not globally where we want to be on integrated ocean management, even though this has been on our tongues since Rio de Janeiro in 1992. And we could say that in many ways the status of our oceans, both for the environment but subsequently for the economy, is more critical than ever, because we have a lot to achieve through the oceans, and now the environmental status is not good. And this is the reason behind the formation of the high-level panel for sustainable ocean economy, which the Norwegian Prime Minister initiated this January with heads of state and government from 12 coastal countries around the world, which will work on a new knowledge foundation, a new way of looking at the relationship between people and the ocean. And this includes the countries of Japan, Indonesia, Australia, Fiji, Palau, Namibia, Ghana, Chile, Mexico, Jamaica, and Portugal, together with Norway and the UN Special Envoy on the Ocean. And this is consists of an expert group which will deliver blue papers on issues that are upcoming on the ocean economy and the environment. They will write 15 blue papers, which will come into a synthesis report that will be ready for what we expect will be the second UN Ocean Conference in Lisbon in June 2020. And there will come recommendations from the high-level panel on action points and pilots that will be put forward before that. And we're working together with finance, tech, and different industries, as well as civil society, to an advisory network to put this forward as good as possible. I guess my time is up, so I'll stop there.
Thanks a lot, Harald. Maybe one question from my side, because you say, yes, we need a common knowledge platform. You need working cross-cutting. At some point you say we need to use others for teasing us, like the OECD. And then at the end, you talk about this high-level platform. Is all this sufficient to move local decision makers towards blue growth? And maybe very practically, one or two solutions that you have tested that you think helps a bit to move forward in the field of literacy, in the field of sharing, capacity building. Do you have any suggestions to bring to the participants?
Well, I think we need to, as I started, we need a change of narrative, and that is also much of the idea behind this high-level panel initiated by our Prime Minister, to move towards a narrative where clean and healthy oceans is a prerequisite for economic growth, and that we can only have sustainable use of oceans. We need an understanding that this is a prerequisite earn money, and that it also pays off. And I think working at a high international level to create this understanding is useful to push things forward, and that we will see results. And we need to get the private sector on board if we're able to achieve anything in these relations. And this will also be relevant for the local level. But more than anything, I think there is a need for increased literacy to achieve sustainable integrated management, both locally, nationally, regionally, and internationally. And for now, we have a lot of educations on different sectors. We have education on fisheries, we have education on marine spatial planning. We have some fragmented approaches to educational programs on ocean management, but I think there could be a need for a more international approach on a new, I wouldn't call it a new science, but a new subject of ocean management more broadly, where we have more ocean professionals that have the knowledge on how to do integrated ocean management, and that there can be a need to create new studies and a network internationally of ocean management experts. Because for now we don't have probably enough capacity and knowledge to get this true at a global level, which I think this integrated management approach is the main key to achieve a sustainable ocean economy in the future.
Maybe I use the last word where you talk about this education, different one, maybe to ask Alessia just to have a reactions on what was said by Harald, how to reach policymakers, and maybe a link to blue skills, which is something that the Commission is carrying out.
Well, I think, first of all, it is true that the ocean is becoming increasingly relevant at international level, but it is not so high as we believe. In the sense that we always say, yes, oceans are becoming important, oceans are increasingly, and it is true, but the majority of the policymakers around the world still ignore what the oceans are, what are the benefits of the ocean or the damages to the ocean. And I see it very much here internally also within the Commission. It is not to give by granted when I speak to colleagues in DG Energy, Agri, Regio, that they are all a bit aware of the challenges and opportunities or possibilities related to the ocean. So I think that the first step for us and for all of us that we work in this community is also to speak to those that do not work in this community, but that their work impact on ocean policies. Because this is really, it's a lesson that we are learning here a lot, and also we have seen it in the drafting of the decarbonization strategy, for example. Everything was focused on land, and it's not because they don't like ocean, it's because they don't know. There is still not enough awareness about this. The second thing I wanted to say is that we have in front of us the UN Decade for Ocean Science, and I think we have to use this as a real opportunity to spread the word and raise awareness and have a common knowledge platform for ocean. And the third is that Harald mentioned the of course change of the narrative, that I agree, and it was also a key message that I wanted to put forward since the beginning, and to move also to production and protection. And in fact, for instance, building with nature is one, let's say, economic area linked to the ocean that we want to promote more and more, and until a few years ago was almost absent from a blue growth perspective. And this is all linked to skills, in fact, because when we discuss about education and how to train the future workforce working in the blue economy, sometimes we forget that the students should know all these elements we have been discussing today. And so far, this is quite absent, not only to those that specifically work on maritime, on maritime related activities, but in general. And so I think we have to start from them if we would expect them to be aware of in the world they live, and also to come up with solutions, as I was saying at the beginning. So we need the future generation to be equipped with knowledge to help us to make this planet healthier, and the ocean included.
Thanks a lot. Time is passing slowly. What I suggest is, yes, we all agree. We need to target policymakers. Alessia said we need to know other policymakers to know better about the ocean and the link between the policies they carry and the ocean itself. Harald said we need some time to work, or we need in general to work cross-sectorally. That should be the principles. And clearly we all agree that we need to share better knowledge and with these policymakers. So my question would be still, policymakers is a challenging target audience, very busy, not always listening to the arguments that we try to raise, like the argument that Harald, you said, you shared, very convincing. And my question is still, from a tools perspective, how best then I would try to reach policymakers? Denis talked about game, working with local policymakers. Does it help? Many use, if you look at the international political scene, some use Twitter's social media more or less intensively. Is it the right way to target policymakers? How do we make sure that this common knowledge platform that is developed reach these audiences? Challenging for all of us, I would say, that are within the policy area or at the periphery of this policy area, how difficult it is to share values, share principles, and then show direction in which we would need to go, like sustainable blue growth. I share it with you. What appears is that clearly sharing experiences with professionals, so we have something at the interface between professional and policymakers, seems to be very interesting, relevant, useful, upper scores, and that at the same level we have the EU level dialogues, similar to what Alessia mentioned, and Facebook, social media, a much more direct way to interfere and to share knowledge with policymakers. I think we are getting close to the end of the webinar. I don't know whether Denis, Harald, Alessia, you want just to give a last message that the webinar participant can take home with them?
Well, if I may say, I think we have always to have clearly in mind the first two slides that I presented, I think. So the situation where we are, to the fact that the narrative really needs to change. How we think a blue economy must change. I mean, has already changed, but will need to change. And the second slide, that is about how blue economy can contribute to the solution. And so far, it has not been seen like this. It has more seen like it is bringing new economic opportunities, that we have to do it in a sustainable way. But we have also to shift there the narrative in seeing the ocean as also a contributor to solutions to global challenges like climate change, for example. So I think these are the key messages that I would like to pass by.
Harald, a message you want people to carry with them?
Well, first of all, thank you for a very interesting webinar and for a very good contribution from the other speakers. It's been a pleasure to take part. There are many points to raise here, but I think main challenges and most important will be to integrated cross-sectoral management and capacity building will be the main contributors in the future.
Ricardo?
Okay, it has been a real pleasure to be here in this webinar, but I would just want to remember one thing. The blue economy is the 5th economy in the world. This message it can be translated to many decision makers at high level and medium level and regional level. It's the 5th economy in the world, and probably in your coastal region, it have an input in your local jobs, and it have an input in the services and the activities you are doing. And fully agree with Harald that it's not only need for marine protected areas, but we also need to do a better job on managing the ocean as general. So, and with Alessia, we need to act. That's true, and we need to raise our capacity building with many different levels. So, for me, it's very important. We are in a crucial point. Probably this processes of marine spatial planning is really bringing an opportunity to put together many different sectors, many different views, and that's a good way. We have experienced that events of marine spatial planning stakeholders meetings, and it's a good way to put different people together and discuss about the concern, about the problems, or about the challenge or the opportunity of the bull growth in the Canary Island in that case, but in a regional level. So I think it's marine spatial planning processes is becoming a good excuse, let's say that way, to promote a sustainable and responsible way of using marine resources.
Denis?
Yes, I think I would very much insist on Alessia's word that something we have to do is to rewrite or write the proper narrative. And I think it's something that in Responsible, we have really tried to tackle around developing key stories. And this is a work that we have to do, but that should be done in a very collaborative manner with all the sectors, public, private industries, or NGOs involved in the debate. The last I would add is that I think there is a lot of knowledge in terms of technology, warnings about sustainability, methodology for impact assessment. A strong demand from policymakers is capacity building in the area of understanding the sociological process, how to engage stakeholders, how to analyze the social scenes so that they can really be more efficient in putting forward the blue growth. And I think this is an area which capacity building is needed, and we need to develop some kind of literacy tools if we want really to support a sustainable blue growth. Thank you very much to all.
I will just share with a few institutional slides, let's say, before we close. If you can go home now with at least 5-6 key messages, remember that the ocean is the 5th economy of the globe. Common knowledge platform is required, not only technical, but with socio-economic processes and issues. It has to be cross-sectoral, whatever you try to do, and including for changing the narratives, because it's the change of narratives that will catch the ears and the eyes of people. And these narratives also has to ensure that you can bring land-based sectors to the sea, because that's important. the slides on Responsible. If you want to know more about what we do, there is a website. There will be, as I said, a conference jointly developed with a Marina project, which is a sister project, we hope, with DG Mare, Alicia, that is here with us, DG RTD, the IOC Decade for Ocean Science, that we also see as a very good instrument for bringing things forward around an issue of ocean knowledge. And if you have more questions, if you want to have more reaction to the webinars, send them to us. I would say that's the fastest. You can write your suggestion in the form that pop up after the webinar, and we will share this with the different speakers, panelists that were here today with us. And for people that are interested by the next webinars, the next one will be on January 17. Here, linked to ocean literacy, will address what we name Think, Hope and Change, which is how ocean literacy is effective or not in supporting change of understanding, but also change of behavior, action, and practices. And in February, we'll have a wider final webinars bringing together key lessons on ocean literacy initiatives. And as I said earlier, our conference in March in Brussels. Many, many thanks to Alessia, Ricardo, Harald, Denis, and to people from our team, Nicola, Shani, Olga, that are not here, but that are behind the scenes. And many thanks to the participants that attended the webinars that lasted a bit longer than what we had planned, but I think it was worth listening to what speakers had to share with us. Wishing you a very, very good day and good Christmas, because many of you, we might not be in relation before that time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
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 Bye bye.